And you and I have been meaning to get around to this for a while, so we're going to go at a two-prong attack on this one, Kingsley. We're going to talk about Dune 1, because you recently talked me into finally getting around to see it. And we're going to do, maybe like a 10, 12-minute spiel on that, get both of our takes on that. And then for you guys that are interested in a longer, more detailed cut, we're going to do a longer talk after. So this is kind of like a taste test, if you will, an appetizer of Dune 1 review, because part 2 comes out, I think, this weekend. It might even be out now in some places, because we're recording this on Wednesday, so there's probably a midnight show coming up in midnight, meaning 10 p.m. I don't know. So there's probably some people that are already seeing it. I've seen some reviews online already. It seems like it's overwhelmingly positively received. So I think we're going to be up for something good. But I wanted to get your take on Dune 1. We're talking specifically about the newest incarnation, the Denis Villeneuve version, not the stuff from the 80s and 90s. We're only doing the new stuff in this video setup. What did you think of part 1 overall? Because you're indoctrinated. You're a Herbert guy. So this is definitely your show. Go.
So watching the original back in 1984 when that came out, and then coming into this adaptation, I was wondering how they're going to do it different. And what they did is what me and Winter Wolf talked about when it comes to adaptation and what makes it good. They stayed strictly to source. He did not try to deviate. Of course, like we've always said, when you adapt, it's never going to be 100. But boy, is he trying. We're talking like Lord of the Rings type detail into this, and it is visually stunning. And at first I was a little worried about Skinny Boy there playing Paul Atreides, but dude, he's pulling it off. I just rewatched it again to get hyped for this weekend, because I've already got my tickets to go see part 2. I'm going to a theater that has a 270-degree viewing range of this movie.
That's that Marcus Theater,
excited.
Right?
Yeah, at the Marcus Theater.
Yeah.
And
nice.
I am so excited to see how they're going to do. Like, in the part 1, you see the sandworms, but I want to see them riding the sandworms. Yeah. If you know, you know. So I'm super excited, and I enjoyed the first part. At first, I was a little worried just because casting, stuff like that. I mean, they did deviate a little bit because like certain characters were male in the book. They were male in part 1, but they're female in this one. Completely pulled it off. No problems, no issues. So
let me stop you right there on that point, because I've heard that also said by other people that enjoyed part 1. And I think what you're getting out of that is the new Battlestar Galactica remake thing that had Katie Sackhoff as Starbuck. People might have been scratching the head at first, but she so slammed that performance and brought some fresh air and a new but familiar take on that character that I think for the most part people got right over that. And they were just like, nope, this was just dope as fuck. We're just gonna go with that.
Yep. She pulled it off completely. It was great.
So in the overall lore and canon department for Dune 1, 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5, as close as you can get to perfect as you were hoping for as a fan?
Yep. You did, they stayed very close to the source. They added a little bit more detail to you understand a little bit more of where the Emperor's coming from in this, why there's a battle for Arrakis and everything like that. I completely enjoyed it.
Okay. Now, for me, I also enjoyed it, and I'm saying that as a guy who, I grew up knowing about Dune. I always saw the book on the shelf at a library or at a bookstore, Walden Books back in the day, Barnes & Noble later on. So I always knew what Dune was. But I was always a Star Trek or a Star Wars kid. I did the Tolkien stuff later, and Dune was just always something else that I never got to. But everybody knows, you could always describe the sandworms. You knew that was from Dune. You knew, the spice must flow, like that was there. May the force be with you. It was their slogan. You knew where those things were. So it wasn't anything super out there for me, but I was still like, I've tried reading the book when I was younger, and it's written in a very different way than our books are written now. I do have a copy and I still haven't gotten around to that, but I know it's not an easy to dive into read.
No,
much
it's
in the same way I think
very
Tolkien is,
Yeah.
Right. But it's not something, it's not written in the modern sense. Like you could pick up any Brandon Sanderson book, we talk about him often, or any Jim Butcher Dresden Files book, we talk about him often, and you could jump right in. Like I could hand any of those books to a 15-year-old and they could read them and enjoy them and talk about what's going on. Dune's a bit more heady, I think. It's sci-fi for sci-fi fans, right?
Yep.
And that was not a barrier to me.
No, not at all. And like you were talking about with these other sci-fi, Star Wars, Star Trek, and Dune, you have 3 different types of sci-fi. Like Star Wars was based off of westerns.
Yep. Yep.
Star Trek was based off a complete space opera exploration.
Yep.
Dune is based off of fantasy sci-fi.
I was going to say sci-fi, high fantasy.
You have barons, you have dukes, you have them with their little fiefdoms and stuff like that. So you have a different type of sci-fi with this one compared to those other legendary titles.
I think that's what made it. I think that's what made it accessible for me going in as a new fan. Is that it instantly reminded me first of Game of Thrones. Like you said, you get the Atreides family that they're appointed by the Emperor in a power play. You get into that story later, but there's that they're the Starks. You know what I mean? They get the screw job from the crown later in the show, and then you got the Harkonnens. They're the Lannisters in a lot of ways, and you can see where authors that came after the fact took inspiration from older things. You know what I mean? So I think it made for an easy entry point to me. And then once I got past that, I just settled right in for the ride. Like, I think the expression visually stunning, it gets overused in certain situations, but I think it's because so much of the other crap we see is so watered down and not interesting that's the only way we can describe new and cool stuff. Like, I felt like this was stuff I hadn't seen before, full well looking you in the eye and telling you, well, dude, I mean, there's Tatooine and then there's Arrakis. They're kind of the same, but Arrakis felt new somehow. You know what I mean? I can't really, I can't put my finger on the pulse of why, but it felt like I was being told something new, and I appreciated that.
One of the things that I can say is different is like Tatooine is more of a more colonized type planet. Like, it's been there for a while. There are people who have like built cities, old stuff like that. Now, when you get to Arrakis, it's more of an occupational type setting. So they've come in and they built their city, their spaceport, and they're mining the spice after they found that spice was grown there. Well, not really grown; it comes from the worms, but they had a indigenous people there that they're completely oppressing, and you did a resistance based on how the Harkonnens treated them, and the Harkonnens
they were there. The Harkonnens were there first, right? Okay.
Yes.
That's right. The Atreides replaced them looked like they replaced them as the story goes.
Yep.
Yeah. I thought, once I got into the movie, I was digging on the look, like I said. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed the various performances of kind of the 3 or 4 main characters. I mean, Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho, always a blast. He's playing himself. Yep. It's fun to watch the guy work, right? But I liked Oscar Isaac as the he's not a king. I mean, what's his chancellor or whatever he was?
He is a duke.
Duke. Okay. Duke Atreides, whatever.
And then the Harkonnen, Vladimir Harkonnen, he's a baron.
Okay, so they did have different positions within the Empire. Okay. So I liked Oscar Isaac. I liked his wife. I can't remember her name, but she was great. The actress that played Jessica, I thought she was great.
Yeah, Jessica.
Big range of emotions, like vulnerability for her kid, but then she'd have to drop that mask real quick and get hard because she's a disciple of the something Jesuit something. I always think Jesuit, but it's not. It's the Bene Gesserit, something like that.
Yeah, the Bene Gesserit. Yeah, Bene Gesserit. Yeah.
Right. Like secret society of women warrior kind of thing, badasses. There might be some magic involved. Don't know. It looked kind of like maybe there was some stuff I didn't understand.
It is their version of space magic is what they use, whereas the voice where they have like it's like in D&D the spell would be command.
Oh yeah, dude. Oh yeah. 100%. And listen, played to good effect. I love that one scene at the end where Mom and Willy Wonka are on the not at all ripped off by Avatar helicopter things, the ornithopter, something like that. What I'm saying, she's telling him telepathically or whatever to use his voice to command the pilot or the gunner to kill the other guy or some shit, and he does it, but he does it wrong, so she corrects him, and then he gets it on the second go, and then she uses it. I'm like, yeah, all right, that's what that looks like when you got to learn some shit.
You had the wrong tone.
Right, dude, verbatim, yeah. But I'm like, dude, that's cool. In fact, I'm gonna call it the opposite of Rey, like where she uses the Force in Force Awakens. She just knows how to do the Jedi mind trick. She should have known what that was, but she did it. But this dude, even though he'd been trained by his mother since like childhood, to come of age with this power set and to develop this training, he still made mistakes, and I think that made him imminently likable in the role. Not perfect. You know what I mean? Made mistakes.
Well, they had the earlier version too when they were at breakfast, and she's like, "Make me
that was
give
the setup.
to you. Use the voice."
Setup, payoff. I think we just talked about this. How it doesn't count if it's all done in the last 90 seconds.
And with that said, you can check out what we're talking about in our smash job of Madam Web. Check out that video that just dropped this week.
Dude, as a side note, you want to know what that movie made per theater on average today?
Like $50.
$600. That movie was garbage. But anyway, lots of good stuff in Dune. Definitely, I think that I'm appreciative of the fact that they played to their strong points with getting the big parts of the lore correct, so people like you wouldn't be upset that they cut out or merged or, you know, otherwise altered things. But it didn't make it feel like to me that I had to read the book to get anything out of this movie. It was still a hell of a ride as the conflict played itself out. We'll talk about it in the longer video with, you know, the backstabbing that went on that kind of set up the kind of the through line to the movie of them being on the run by the end. I won't say them and spoil it for here for any of you folks that haven't seen it or read it. But big changes happen in the world. Big changes happen in the world. And I thought that was fun.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to talk about too is that this movie was cut into 2 parts, and I think they picked the perfect spot to actually cut it in half so they can make the second part, because he wanted to tell the story right. I can respect that. Unlike people who want to cut books in half to make 2 movies to do a cash grab, I think this director wanted to do it so he could do this right. He would have the time. One of the big complaints about the earlier adaptation in the 80s was that the pacing was completely off. It was just couldn't flow well. The plot was a little disjointed. This movie corrected all of that for the fans. It has been well received by Dune fans, past and present.
Yeah, I think part 2. I think it doesn't do them any favors that they went with that as the title. I think we said this to each other the other day, that it's not really part 2 in the conventional sense where that means sequel. You know what I mean? No, this is just like you said. It's the second half of the first thing. You know, Back to the Future 2 is a sequel.
Yeah, you know? And that's where my wife pointed out where you could use part 1 and part 2 for the same thing. Now, if they went and said Dune 2,
sequel,
then it would be sequel.
But
instead of saying Dune Part 2,
I think there's, like you said, it's got some multi-purposeism going on to it. I don't think it's going to really confuse anybody that gave a damn anyway, because, you know, we were saying the early reviews on part 2 were strong. I think that part 1 would have done better in theater, but it was in the middle of that COVID insanity. It was in theaters, then it was delayed or whatever happened. It got pushed, and then not Captain Douche Nozzle. Dune got moved, and the Marvels came out and still bombed. But you know that shit out. Oh, no, Dune.
Yeah, this is when Dune came out like with Maverick, where like they reopened theaters, and then they closed them again, and then opened it back up.
That's what it was. It was Dune 2 that got bumped forward, and then the Marvels got in that spot and tanked anyway. Right. So I don't think Dune 1 didn't have any favors going for it, but I think that with part 1 being on Netflix it's still there. You guys could still catch it on Netflix. Until tomorrow. I was going to say it says leaving soon, which makes sense because it's coming. Part 2 is here. Now they want you to buy part 1 to get caught up. But I would highly recommend anybody that has the access, if you see this in time, check it out on Netflix there. One more thing I wanted to talk about, because you just mentioned the flow of things, and it's just pacing. Guys, if you're not used to these kind of movies, empty the bladder before you sit down, because it does run a little long. But I'll say this. Unlike when I was at the movies the other day and seeing Madam Web, which ran for like 7 hours, I wasn't checking my watch every 15 seconds when I saw Dune. I was just like, okay, I'm here. Show me the movie. Yep. And to its credit, it wasn't because it's a shootout every 5 seconds, because it's not that either, guys. This isn't the Clone Wars. Like, there's very little in the way of that kind of action that happens. It comes in, it does the every 10 pages of script thing. You know, it's like something pops off every 10 minutes like it's supposed to, but it gives you that breathing space in between to be like, oh, that's why she said that. Oh, that's how that thing over there works. And it was nice to see it. It felt, you know what it did? It felt old. It felt like an older movie. Like if we were to pop in Wrath of Khan, it felt like
Godfather.
Godfather. Great example. It felt like Jaws, like E.T., like Indiana Jones. Like there's older movies where something pivotal happens, or something instrumental happens every 10 minutes to, like King Z's always saying, push the plot forward. So this is going to be a taste of something different for any of you guys that haven't seen it yet. And I really encourage you guys to get out there and say, because I'll give it the 4.5 out of 5 also. For sure, I'll give it the 4.5 out of 5.
It is definitely worth the see.
All right, guys.
It's worth the time. I think it's 2 hours and 49 minutes. The first one. I think the second one's going to run 2 hours and 50 minutes.
It's right. So, it's a little north of that. I think it's closer to 3 hours. But it's like you said, if it's like this, we're in the clear. And I've been told, just given the nature of the book that I haven't read, part 2 pops off a little bit more at the end because it is the military fallout of what happens in part 1.
And that's one of the points I was going to say right here at the end, based on what you're saying, where it's like you have the up, and then you have a little lull period. You have story, and then you have action, and then you have story. And what's going to happen in part 2 will be a lot more up here. You're going to see the insurrection and the battle for Arrakis. So
speaking of insurrection, no, we don't do that here on the channel. So that's going to wrap it up for our quick review on Dune 1. So we're going to get out of here fast on this one. We're both very high on it. We're both looking forward to part 2. We are going to record a longer, kind of one of our more usual 45-minute kind of deep conversations. I got questions for King Z that aren't appropriate in a short review. We're gonna bang them out, but we wanted to give you guys this teaser taste first so you can check it out. King Z, read us out of here and let's get back to work.
All right, if you did like this shorter content, let us know. If you have any ideas for us to help us out with this trying to short, long type format, leave us a comment. Help us out, because we want to get better so we can provide better content for you to watch. Your time's valuable, so is ours. So we want to make sure that when we're doing this, we're doing what's good for you. If you liked our stuff, make sure you hit that thumbs up, because it helps us in the algorithm, gets our stuff out to other people so they can see it and maybe they like it. If you stuck around and watch this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Join our drive to 5. We're driving to 500 subscribers, and you can be part of that if you haven't subscribed already. If you already subscribed, thank you very much. Thank you for being part of the den. And with that said, I think it's time to say goodnight.
See you guys.